You are listening to the Strong as a Working Mom podcast, episode number 90. If you have trouble making decisions about your diet, exercise plan, schedule, or really anything, let me help you out. Welcome to the Strong as a Working Mom podcast. If you're balancing career, family, wellness, and some days sanity, you are in the right place. This is where high-achieving, busy working moms get the tools they need to eat, move, and think. I'm your host, physician, personal trainer, and certified life coach, Carrie Holland. Let's do this. Hey, how are you? What's new? What's good? So, what's good here? Well, for starters, what's good here is that I had the privilege of giving 2 talks in the last week. And actually, they were both on the same day. So I started out my Friday with a talk for the Michigan Women's Bar Association. And then I finished out the day with a talk for the faculty at my kids' grade school for part of their professional development day. And while it was a lot of adrenaline to smash into one day, it was absolutely 100% worth it. So admittedly, it also required a wardrobe change because for as much as I love public speaking, I still get insanely nervous, and that manifests as legit serious sweat. And talking to a group of smart women lawyers, well, you can bet that totally made me sweat. But I do it anyway because I love the challenge of having to bring my A game in order to share a message that I feel so strongly about. And sweat aside, while I love the thrill and the challenge of public speaking, on this particular day, it came at a cost. So my boys were off from school that day, and I was largely unavailable to hang out with them because I was fine-tuning my talks, and then I had to leave to go give the talk at their school. So with Adam and I both working, they were pretty bored for most of the day. And later that evening, when I was back home talking with them, I acknowledged to them that it was not the most exciting day for them. And I had some pretty serious guilt about it. And I apologized that their day wasn't super fun. But then I asked them if they knew why I do what I do. And so my oldest immediately asked if it was to buy a private jet. And so that's a running joke in our house, that I quit my doctor job so I could start a business and buy them a PJ, or a private jet. And I have no idea where this idea came from, but I have to constantly remind them, no, in fact, there is no PJ or private jet in our future, like not at all. So this joke, while totally ridiculous, has opened up the door to conversation about what it means to be an entrepreneur and own a business. And I think that my boys envision an entrepreneur as Jeff Bezos or the dudes of Dude Perfect. And for them to know that their mom is also a business owner by nature, I think they've decided that I'm at that caliber. So once I explained that no, in fact, I don't do this to buy a private jet, I asked them if they understood what a calling is. So my oldest asked if that meant like being called to be a priest. So they do go to a Catholic school after all. So this was closer to the mark. And while no, I am nowhere near anything like a Catholic priest, nor will I ever, never, ever, ever be, he had the right idea. And I explained that I thought when I first started out that I was called to help people by being a doctor. I thought that was my purpose, and that's how I could contribute to the world, by taking care of people when they were sick, or delivering their babies, or taking care of my older patients through the end of their lives. But through my own journey, I realized that while medicine was the start, I'm actually called to do what I do now, which is coaching and now more public speaking. I feel called to share my message loudly, that a woman, or a man too, does not and should not have to choose between career, family, wellness, or herself. And I feel so strongly that we have to take better care of ourselves, both our minds and our bodies, so we can take care of all the other people who need and depend on us. And I feel called to shout it out to anybody who will listen, whether that's by recording this podcast or posting a selfie on social media every day or speaking at an event. I will do whatever I have to do to get the message across that having a strong mind and a strong body, it matters. It matters a whole lot. And so all of this is to say, while there are days, in fact, there are many days that I feel a solid sense of guilt for working and taking time away from my family and my kids, I practice what I preach and I use my tools. I remind myself what I learned from my own coach and what I learned reading self-help book after self-help book. That guilt is going to be there. That guilt of trying to be both a great parent and have a great career, that's not going anywhere. And I used to try to make that guilt go away. And maybe you can relate. Maybe there are times when you're at work and you're thinking about your family and wondering if you're doing the right thing. And then that resistance comes up. Or maybe there are times when you're with your family and while you're having fun and it's awesome, there are twinges of guilt that there are things you could or should be doing to keep moving the needle on your career. It's like a never-ending push-pull of guilt in either direction. And I used to try really, really hard to shove it in a pocket and make it go away. But now I realize that I can let that guilt be there and keep moving forward anyway. I allow the feeling of guilt. I don't resist it anymore because I know that I can feel that guilt all the way through and come out on the other side and still have my own back. I used to avoid that guilt like the plague, and it felt awful. But now I feel that guilt and I do the damn thing anyway. I close my office door and practice my talks so I'm ready to nail it when I'm in front of an audience. Or I put away my computer and I sit at the island in my kitchen and talk with my kids on a Friday afternoon about nothing in particular when I could be writing another post or another newsletter or a podcast. I feel that guilt in either direction and I move forward anyway. Because at the risk of sounding hokey, I want all of it. I want a meaningful and successful career that is not a hobby. I want a family. I want to feel good in my body and in my brain, so I make time to exercise and eat. I want time to read and open my brain to new concepts and keep learning. I want to be more than the sum of my titles. And because of that, I accept the guilt that I cannot do everything all at once, and I will be imperfect at all of it. And that's not going to stop me. And I don't want it to stop you either. And with that, the other thing that's good around here, we are going to talk about indecision today. And how this relates to this very long story I just shared with you is this. So while I am so insanely grateful that I finally pulled the trigger and shook up my career to become a life coach for all the reasons I just mentioned, there are days when I still cannot believe how long it took me to decide what to do with myself. When I realized that medicine was not my finish line, instead of doing something about it, I spent years of my life in indecision. I simply could not bring myself to say, I am leaving my job. I am leaving medicine. I just couldn't do it. I was swimming in indecision for years before I frankly got tired of myself and finally took action. So while your career might be a major area of indecision, you may find that you struggle with indecision in other parts of your life, especially when it comes to making changes to your lifestyle or your schedule. And this is a concept I feel passionately about because it is something I struggle with myself. Whether it is deciding on my next career move, a meal plan, an outfit, dinner at a restaurant, it really doesn't matter what it is. I tend to be very indecisive. Ask my husband, he will most certainly vouch for me. And the more I coach, the more I find I'm not alone in my indecision. But I want to change that and help you see how much indecision is costing you and encourage you to move forward. Because indecision can totally keep you stuck and it is a huge waste of energy. So let's talk about it. I'm going to share some of the most common reasons you might get trapped by indecision, and then we're going to talk about what to do about it. Because honestly, this is where I see so many of you lose time, energy, and momentum, and it can feel exhausting. So if I can help you move past it and get on with whatever is next for you, whether that's related to your diet, your nutrition, your career, or something else, then I'm doing what I set out to do. All right? So let's go. Let's talk about some of the reasons you might be getting stuck in indecision. So first, what I most commonly find is that you get stuck because you want two or more things, and those two things generally conflict with each other. So think back to what I was just talking about. I just went off on a tirade about how I wanted to have a career and have a good relationship with my kids. And what I did was I pitted those two things against each other when they didn't need to be. And that's just one example. So now let's take it out to weight loss. So often you want to eat a certain way, but you also want to lose weight. And more often than not, the way you want to eat does not add up to weight loss. If you have spent years eating whatever you want, whenever you want, and then you realize that, hey, what might have been no big deal when I was 20 is now causing me to have to buy a bigger pant size, that can be a challenge. And then we're talking about breaking habits that have been around for decades, and you're accustomed to eating a certain way. So when you go to change that up, it can be hard first to know what to do, but then it can also be hard to put it in motion because it is totally new and different. And you've got the desire to lose weight, but it's running directly counter to your desire to eat a certain way. Or let's take it to your physique. So say you want to build muscle. You want to look a certain way and have visible muscle. So if you've been around here at all, you know what I'm going to say. It's going to look like lifting heavy weights for months, if not years, and eating in a way that supports building muscle. And depending on where you're coming from, both your diet and your exercise routine may need to change, and that can be hard. So even though you want to look a certain way and have muscle, you may not be interested, ready, or willing to do the heavy lifting and the time necessary to get those muscles. Or you may not be willing to eat in a way that results in building muscle. If you're at a normal weight and you're looking to build muscle, you may actually need to eat in a caloric surplus in order to build muscle. And that means you might gain weight. And as soon as I say those words, you may balk, and that may be enough to say no thank you. So you may have two desires that run against each other. Your desire to look a certain way and have a muscular physique pitted against your desire to stay at the same weight and maybe not lift in a way that you're used to lifting. And to be clear, body recomposition is possible and it can be done without gaining weight, but it can take a lot more time than if you were to accept a slight weight gain while you build muscle before going into a calorie deficit. And again, it comes back to competing desires. We often want things that seem to operate counter to each other. So if you find that this is you, and if you want things that seem to run against each other, I'm going to offer you this. Two things can be true. You can want a career and want to spend quality time with your kids. You can want to eat in a certain way and still want to lose weight. You can want to build muscle and not want to gain any weight. You can allow for all of those desires to be there simultaneously. And then you can start asking yourself some questions. Like first and foremost, is there a reasonable way to have both? So this is thinking in terms of possibility, which I've talked about before on the podcast. And that simply means that you're looking for what is possible in your life instead of finding all the things that are not possible in your life. So in our example, is it possible to have a meaningful career and still spend quality time and have a good relationship with your family and kids? Yes. And the way you might approach this is by recognizing that some days work is going to need you more and you may be less available for your family. Like me, when I did those 2 talks back to back and was practicing in my office and not being super fun with my kids. And other days, you may be less available to work because you're watching your kids' spelling bee or you're watching them at their basketball game and you close up your computer, you close up shop, and you're unavailable to respond to texts or emails related to work because you're being present with your family. So in that situation, you may decide that both desires are possible. And it's awesome when it works out that way. But now let's talk about what happens if both desires are not possible and they really do conflict with each other. And this is most often true for people who are trying to lose weight and are used to eating a certain way. And that often involves processed foods or eating out quite a bit or having a certain amount of alcohol regularly. So those desires often do not go with losing weight. So meaning, while you can certainly have meals at restaurants and drink alcohol, the degree, extent, and frequency are going to have to change if you really want to lose weight. And then you're left with a different decision, and you have to reconcile those competing desires. You have to decide what matters more to you and what you're willing to do. If you decide that it's more important to eat a certain way than it is to lose weight, then you've made your choice. If you decide that it's not worth it to you to give up meals out, or that you don't want to rein it in when you go out and simply eat whatever looks good to you, which some of you have told me, then you've made your choice. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's neutral. It's your choice. Or you may decide to make a different choice. You may decide that while yes, it's fun to go out to eat and get whatever you want, you're tired of the impact that it's having on your weight and how you feel. You're tired of feeling bloated and gross from the salt, the butter, the oil, and the sugar that comes with eating out all the time. And you may decide that changing your lifestyle and changing the way you eat matters more to you than the variety, the ease, and the entertainment that eating out gives you. And then you make that choice. You get to decide which is more of a priority to you. It's always in your control. So you're reconciling your competing desires and then choosing what is a priority for you and acting according to that. And that can help you move out of indecision and on to taking action in favor of whatever choice you make. You reconcile your wants. Okay? All right, next. Another reason you might be stuck in indecision is fear, especially fear of making the wrong choice. And to be perfectly honest, I see this fear as another sneaky way that you let perfectionism creep into your decision making. So often, when I'm working with a client who wants to lose weight, she will be on a quest to find the exact right diet to make it happen. She wants to know what the right formula is to get lean, have muscle, and take the weight off. And we'll talk through it, but it can still be challenging for her to commit to a way of eating and decide on a protocol for herself because it means making a decision. And making that decision may mean it's the wrong one. So this is interesting. The origin of the word decide, it's Latin. It means to cut off. So think about that. Think about what happens when you make a decision, whether or not you're going to start intermittent fasting, whether you're going to buy a Peloton, or whether you're going to send in your CV for a different job. You are choosing something. You are choosing to go down one path, thereby cutting off the option of going down a different path. And you don't know what the outcome of either path is going to be. And that can be really challenging for people who like to get it exactly right from the outset. So you may have tremendous fear that by making a decision and committing to something, you've chosen the wrong thing to commit to, or that whatever you choose is not going to lead to the exact right outcome. And that fear can be paralyzing. So instead of making a decision, instead of taking the risk of being wrong or not getting it exactly right, you don't make any decision at all, because then you don't have to be wrong. And you don't have to worry about being imperfect because you haven't done anything. And that is when you're stuck in miserable comfort. It's familiar, it's safe, it's comfortable, but it's not moving you anywhere, and it feels awful. And when you do this, when you stay in indecision out of fear that you might not make the right choice, you're essentially avoiding feeling a certain way, right? It all comes back to your feelings, always. So think about it. If you choose a diet like intermittent fasting, you may feel something when all of your friends are eating pancakes at breakfast and you're choosing not to in order to stick to your schedule. Or if you choose to buy a piece of expensive gym equipment or a gym membership, you are left to wrestle with all the feelings if or when you don't use it. Or if you decide on a career trajectory and find that no one in your network is responding to your emails, you're going to feel something. You're going to have some feelings. And there will most likely be some negative feelings if you try and see that intermittent fasting doesn't work for you, even though it worked for your best friend who lost a ton of weight. Or when you buy a gym membership and aren't going consistently and are essentially wasting money. Or when you send out the CV and your response is crickets. You're probably going to have some negative feelings. But rather than experience those negative feelings and keep going anyway, you decide instead to keep thinking about it. And you don't make any decisions at all. No good. So remember this. Everything you do or don't do is because of how you think it will make you feel. That is so important and essential to understand. Everything you do or don't do is because of how you think it will make you feel. And we spend a lot of time avoiding making decisions so that we don't have to feel discomfort. But I would argue that we're not doing ourselves any favors by staying in indecision and remaining in miserable comfort. When you lack the confidence in yourself to make a decision out of fear it will be the wrong one, and instead you choose to stay comfortable, you're denying yourself a lot of opportunity for growth, even if there are some failures along the way, because that's where the growth is. This is one of the most painful ways that fear of failure, fear of making the wrong choice, which to me is really another shade of perfection, is keeping you stuck in indecision. So if this is you, and if perfectionism and the fear of getting it wrong is keeping you from making a decision, start small. Choose something and allow yourself to fail. Ew, I know. And that may sound totally nauseating to you. I'm asking you to try and allow yourself to mess up. So start intermittent fasting and see how it goes for you. Or write up a plan for how you'll eat and try it out. Practice following it. Write out a workout schedule for yourself and see what happens when you put it into practice. Contact someone in your network and set out a CV for a job that sounds interesting to you. And let yourself fail. See what happens when you don't follow the plan you wrote out for yourself because you planned too little calories and it was too restrictive. Or see what happens when you create a workout schedule that is too intense and not realistic for your schedule. Or experience the disappointment of not being called or contacted after you send out your resume. So why am I asking you to do these things and let yourself fail? Because then you will learn something. When you do nothing, you learn nothing. But if you do something, no matter how small that something is, two things happen. One, it feels really, really good to take action because action is motivating. You will feel so much better when you take a deep breath and do something instead of thinking about doing something. And two, when you do something, you get a result. Even if that result wasn't the one you were hoping for, you did something. And that result will guide your next steps. So think about it this way. When you're swimming in indecision, you are going around and around and back again. in your brain. And that is exhausting. And the worst part is you haven't taken any action. You haven't done anything. If you are sitting in indecision right now, no matter what it's in relation to, you may very well feel exhausted because you're expending a boatload of brain energy thinking about it. But you have nothing to show for it. You haven't done anything on the outside. But on the inside, it may feel like you've run a marathon because of all of the energy you've spent pondering your next step. And that is a really unpleasant place to be. When instead, you could take a forward step, no matter how small, and get some answers. So for example, if you work with me and you decide on a way of eating, we create your protocol. And then you go test it out and find that you're eating entirely off plan, then we've got information. And that information will guide your next steps. That's the best part. When you finally take action, you learn something. And based on what you learn, that will inform your next steps. More answers will reveal themselves to you. You may find that intermittent fasting just does not work for you because you really love breakfast, or you work out in the morning and it does not work for you to be fasted that long. So you rewrite a food plan that includes breakfast, and then you try that out. Or if you buy a gym membership only to never go, now you've got information. Now you know that you either need to pay more money and hire a personal trainer who will be waiting for you at that gym for a training session, or you need to have a workout buddy to meet you who is holding you accountable. Or you need to give up the gym membership and get a set of dumbbells and a bench for your home because you realize you actually prefer to work out there. All of that is information. And the only way you're going to get that information is by taking action and allowing yourself to mess up. And you may not even mess up. But worst case scenario, if your plan does not work, then you at least have data so you can troubleshoot and try again. So allow yourself to fail. Okay? All right, next. The next thing I see that keeps so many of you from making a decision is that you feel you need more information. And again, that can be in relation to anything. Finding the best diet, researching what the best workout is, or getting on LinkedIn to start researching what the hot jobs are in your industry right now. And what I'll see happen is that you'll use this to your own detriment. Okay, so while yes, you absolutely want to make the best decision for yourself based on the information available to you, sometimes you use this as a weapon against yourself. Or more specifically, you put off making a decision under the guise of needing more information, when really it ends up being procrastination. So to be clear, I'm all about doing your homework before jumping into anything. Hello, I'm a huge nerd. I love research. I like studies. I like reviews. Whatever it is, I like to dive in and learn as much as I can in order to make an informed decision. However, I also know myself and know that I can get so bogged down by minutia and feel the need to examine things from every single angle that I don't move forward at all. Again, ask Adam. I'm pretty sure he can vouch for me on this. So while yes, please gather information and collect whatever data you need, at the end of the day, finish the job and make a choice. Okay? Give yourself a deadline or time limit, or be very, very specific about the information you need in order to make a decision. Find it and make your choice. So one of my most favorite questions to ask clients when they're swimming in indecision is this: what information do you need in order to make a decision? And then we work the process backwards to determine how she'll get that information and by when, so that we can keep moving forward. Because here's what I see. Often, instead of making a decision, I will see a lot of consuming and very little applying. So you may feel compelled to read or Google search or talk to friends or look on Facebook or LinkedIn, and you keep doing that more and more without actually making a decision. And what's happening is that you're flooding yourself with information. That may be your internet search about various diet plans, or you go look at a few different diet books at Barnes & Noble. Then you start scouring Facebook groups to see if there are Facebook groups for people who follow your diet. Or you go to Instagram to see what influencers back up your diet. And you keep telling yourself that you need more time to do research and gather information so you can make a decision. When really what you end up doing is consuming and consuming without actually applying anything. And that can leave you stuck. And here's where this gets tricky. Endless research and collecting information and thinking about it can leave you feeling mentally exhausted. It might feel totally overwhelming if you let yourself stay in an information gathering phase indefinitely. So as an example, you decide you want to adopt a more plant-based diet. So you're not going to go vegan, you're not becoming vegetarian, but you're opting for more plant-forward dishes. But then you start to second guess yourself and spend all kinds of time looking up plant-based diets, and you decide you need a slew of recipes. You have to overhaul your pantry and fridge. Maybe you need to find some more books first. Then you search out some influencers who are plant-based, and you see if this makes sense for you. And that can feel like a lot of work and mental energy spent, because it is. But you haven't actually done anything. You haven't tried anything. When meanwhile, you could go to the store, buy some veggies from the produce section, eat them, and call it a day. So I know that may be oversimplifying, but really, if you want to change up your diet, you don't have to make it complicated. Don't trick yourself into thinking that you have to find the best diet, when really, we're just looking for the best diet for you. And you're probably not going to find the best diet for you spelled out in a book or on Instagram. It's going to be found through trial and error. You may find that eating plant-based works, but you do better when you have some steak or chicken every now and then. Or you may find that you need to cut out dairy. And the only way you're going to learn those things is by trying something and seeing how it works for you. So remember, you learn the how by doing. You can think and think and think, and you can gather data and look up stuff and research until you are blue in the face. And on a side note, please do your research from reputable sources, okay? Please don't get all of your research from Facebook or Instagram. Please seek out reputable sources that are not trying to sell you a supplement. In all seriousness, you can look up stuff and find new sources indefinitely. You could spend months or even years researching and not make a decision. But really, the only way you're going to make any forward progress is by taking what you know, the best information you have available to you at the time, and make a choice. Okay? All right, the last common pattern I see when you get stuck in indecision is that you tell yourself, I need to think about it. And you let yourself think about it indefinitely. So again, I'm not encouraging you to make a snap decision, but I would encourage you to set a deadline or a timeline after which you take a breath and you make a choice. Do not get trapped in telling yourself, I need to think about it. So to me, that's code for, I don't want to make a choice. So instead, I'm going to spend a lot of mental energy going in circles and not take any action, because that's safer than trying something and messing up. So yes, please do think about your choice. Are you going to join a gym or not? Are you going to start a diet or not? Are you going to look for another job or not? But don't let months pass by before you do anything about it. The sooner you make a choice, commit, and go all in, the sooner you will get data. The sooner you will know whether or not you prefer to work out at home or work out surrounded by other people. The sooner you decide on a diet, the sooner you can try it out and see if you actually like it and it's meeting your goals. The sooner you decide on a career path, the sooner you will learn if it is really what you want to do with yourself. And then you can move forward from there. And so here's something else to consider. Most of the decisions we make in our lives are not irreversible. Most of our decisions are not that big that you can't undo them. So sure, if you submit your 2-week notice, or in my case, it was a 6-month notice for your resignation, then you might be committed and you may not be able to undo that. But I'm talking about the other decisions, the smaller ones, like sending out a CV, reaching out to a contact on LinkedIn, interviewing for another job, taking a course. None of those are huge decisions, but they will move the needle forward before you get to the point of submitting your letter of resignation. And those aren't irreversible. And so here are some things you can do instead of overthinking. If you find yourself trapped in indecision because you're spending so much energy thinking and feel that you need more information, ask yourself this question. What can you do to move forward in the smallest way possible? And this is instead of saying, I need to think about it, which you could do for forever. So instead, make the smallest decision you can and act on it. Ask your friend who lost 20 pounds intermittent fasting how it went and what it felt like. Read the books about it. Find out what the benefits and disadvantages are. Research the different pieces of home gym equipment and their pros and cons. Do your homework, but be sure that it's purposeful, intentional, targeted homework that gets you enough information to make an informed decision. And then give yourself a deadline. If you are someone who draws out your decisions, set a deadline for yourself. Give yourself time to collect data, give yourself time to think, but then set an endpoint so that you don't go on overthinking and researching for forever. And here's the thing to remind yourself. I've said it already. Make the decision a small one, okay? Whether it's related to your diet, your exercise, relationship, your career, whatever it is, you do not have to take a flying leap off a cliff, okay? You can take a stepping stone approach and make a small but impactful decision that will move you forward. So for example, if you want to dabble in intermittent fasting, but you're not sure if you're committed, You could do it Monday through Friday and eat regularly on the weekend. You can try that out for a few weeks and see how it works for your life. Or if you're scoping out gyms, you can try one out. Or you can try out the Peloton app or the Beachbody app just for a few weeks and see if it makes sense before you go all in. Or you can volunteer at the Humane Society before you decide to open your own animal shelter. One of my clients did exactly this before she made any move forward on her career path. And again, none of these are big or wild moves, but they are steps forward. And that's exactly the point. When you make a decision, no matter how small, and then most importantly, you act on it, things happen. That's forward motion, and it feels good. And not only does it feel good, but you'll get answers. You may find that you do just fine without breakfast and you decide to take on intermittent fasting as a lifestyle. You may find that you love the Peloton app so much that you buy the bike. Or you may find that you love being around animals more than people, and opening up an animal shelter is what you're called to do, so you go scout out spaces. Or you may find that the opposite is true in all of these cases, and you want to eat breakfast, or join a gym, or find a different career path entirely. And the only way you're going to get these answers is by doing something. Keyword doing. And that really is the take home from today. Indecision is such a huge energy suck because it feels exhausting. You're spinning in circles, you're swimming in the drama of indecision, and you're going absolutely nowhere. But when you make a decision and you commit to it and take a step forward by taking action, then you're doing something. And that will likely lead to you doing more. So remember your physics here. An object in motion stays in motion. I want you to stay in motion because that is how you keep growing and evolving and moving forward. As hard as it may feel to make a choice, whether that's because of competing desires, fear of making the wrong choice, which is really a mask for perfectionism, feeling the need for more information, or straight up overthinking, whatever the reason may be, once you take a deep breath, make that choice, and take a step, you will feel better. And you'll see that step wasn't such a doozy after all. And you'll learn what your next steps are. You do not have to be fully ready. You just have to be willing. And that's what I'll help you do. If you're tired of swimming in indecision, let's go. When you coach with me, I will not let you spin in circles. I will ask you questions, help you find answers so you can take steps forward, whether that's in your career, your wellness, or both. Check out my website. Go to www.carriehollandmd.com/contact. Tell me where you're stuck in indecision, and let's get you out of it. Okay? Thank you again for hanging out with me, and I'll catch you again next week. If you like what you've been hearing, please review the show. I would love to get your feedback and ideas. Your suggestions have inspired episodes and will help me make the show better for you. And share this podcast with a friend. Text a show link, share a screenshot, or post a link to the show on your social media. And be sure to tag me at Carrie Holland MD on either Instagram or Facebook so I can follow along and engage with you. This is how we get the word out to other working moms who want to feel strong inside and out. If you know someone who wants to feel better or eat and move differently, but she is too tired or too busy, it is time to change things up. And you know, making that change starts with how you think. And that is what we do here on the Strong as a Working Mom podcast. I'll see you next week. Thanks for listening to Strong as a Working Mom. If you want more information on how to eat, move, and think so you can live in the body you want with the mind to match, visit me at carriehollandmd.com.